There you go.
Good afternoon, everyone. So today, as Luke mentioned, I'm going to be talking about how to swim when you're drowning in data. And when we go to these types of events, or when we read our marketing blog posts in the morning over our breakfast, or when we look at what people are talking about on Twitter in relation to data, lots of these topics come out. So data-driven marketing, machine learning, big data, automation. These are topics that come up all of the time. And particularly when we think about how people talk about them, they're often talking about the challenges that they're facing. And that's okay that we're talking about this as an industry. However, it's also really good to question why these topics keep coming up and why, as an industry, we're quite slow in adopting some of these areas, particularly around things like automation and attribution. We talk about them very regularly, but we don't necessarily always focus on what the solutions are for moving forward. Instead, we continue in the discussion without necessarily identifying what the quick wins are. So what I did was look back at some of the blog posts, particularly around prediction, that I'd seen since 2016, and I picked out some clear topics within them that I really wanted to touch upon, and then talk about, why have we not made any movements in those areas, or when I say any, that's probably a bit harsh, but why are we kind of slow with that adoption, and where can we start to actually make movement, even if it's incrementally. So the first one, brands will deliver personalized communications that we've been waiting for. That's something that we've been talking about consistently over the past 3 or 4 years. And every year, in every kind of 2016, 17, 18, beginning of the year prediction article, we focus on this is what we'd love to see. Marketers will adopt advanced marketing attribution for optimization. Again, this is something that we've been grappling with for quite a while. Movements around the attribution area have changed quite a lot. We've talked previously in the past couple of years about last click and how we're going to start to move away from that, and we focus a lot on data-driven attribution, but there's not as many case studies as we'd possibly expect to see when we think back to when we first introduced this topic, kind of 2014, 2015. And then the last one, that marketers will finally develop a cross-channel view of their customers and their behaviours. And so what I want to focus on today is advanced marketing attribution, because when you look at these 3 topics, what you're seeing is that attribution and modelling will help to deliver personalised communications, because it will be able to identify what are your most valuable customers and how can you spend in line with their value. And in terms of a cross-channel view of the customer, that's also coming from modelling and attribution as well. So I really want to focus on how marketers adopt advanced marketing attribution, and also what are the possible blocks to moving forward with that. And so the reason why a lot of people talk about their challenges so much of the time is because we are completely drowning. And that's not just in terms of data. I mean, we have a lot of it, but it's also in terms of choices. And so what came to my mind when I was putting this talk together was thinking about the paradox of choice. And that's something that psychotherapist Barry Schwartz put together in 2005, this concept that less is more. The concept that the more choice we have in the world, the less happy we are. And actually, when you look at that in terms of what we do as an industry, what we are often finding is that the more choice we have, it's slowing down the progress that we're hoping to make. And it can be pretty overwhelming. I work in data, I work in the analytics department, and what I'm really seeing in a lot of our clients and prospects and what they're facing is that they just don't know where to start. There are so many options. And what I really want to focus on is how we start to move forward from that. And so I've coined what I call the 3 Ps, which is perfectionism, procrastination, and paralysis. So this is where I think we're pretty much going wrong. So when you think about all the products that we have great products now. If you look back 20 years and think about the first industries that started adopting data and started working with big data, so people like financial services, people like supermarkets, what we see is that they had less choice and they had to make significant investment, into the millions and billions, into big architecture pieces that were very, very large enterprise, or very geared to the large enterprise models. And actually, we don't have that situation now. We're very fortunate that there's been an explosion in accessible measurement tools. We're very fortunate that there's been changes to the cloud services that we're able to use on a day-to-day basis. And we're also seeing that there's been a big change to things like technology stacks, where you're able to do a kind of a la carte, take what you need and leave the rest option. And what that's meant is we have lots of options, but also many, many variations that we could put together to achieve what we want to achieve. And so where the 3 Ps come in is where I feel like we're going wrong is really on how we approach things. It's not necessarily that we have all this technology and that no technology is right. It's that we don't necessarily know how to approach the situation without getting entrenched in perfectionism, procrastination, and paralysis. And so perfectionism really is where it all starts. We think we need the perfect attribution model. We think we need the perfect measurement solution. We think we need everything to be 100% perfect. And what we hold in our consciousness often becomes a reality. So when we're obsessing about this so much, it comes out in what we do. And we're then unwilling to accept anything that's short of perfection. Not a bad place to be, but definitely a blocker to making some movement in this area. Procrastination, we become so compelled to pick the perfect option, even though we objectively know there is no perfect solution, that we become afraid of making the wrong decision. And so we stay in this place where we slow down, we don't feel like we have all of the information, we're afraid of making the wrong choice, moving in the wrong direction. And so what we think is, I need more information, I need to know more, I need to know everything I can on the planet, and that's when we reach analysis paralysis. And people talk about this quite a lot, but they don't really talk about actually how do we move through this. You know, we're entrenched in so much data now and so many choices that actually what can we do to move forward? And yes, there is a risk that we might go down the wrong path, but actually, if we don't make any movement at all, is that not slightly worse? So I think what came to mind when I was thinking about analysis paralysis was the fact that in 2015, there were 1.3 million search results for analysis paralysis on the internet. Today, there are 2.7 million, so that's an 110% increase. So 2 years ago, if I'd have decided today that I was going to talk to you about analysis paralysis, but I wasn't going to talk to you until I'd read all of the possible information I could, I would have got to today, I would have Googled it again, and I would have gone, oh, I can't talk about it now either, because I've got another 1.4 million search results to look at. And that's where we are, staying in this place where we constantly need more information to make any decisions, is that we're unable to move forward because we will never have all of the information that we need. And so I want to talk today about 4 concepts that I believe can help people to move forward. And the first one is defining what your perfect is. So this is thinking about your business. You know, we all go to these talks and we all hear case studies from what other businesses are doing, but taking what works for one person and translating it to your business isn't necessarily going to work. And the reasons for that is obviously the obvious. You might have different KPIs, but also your technology structure, your skill set in your business and your culture will be very different. And so what you really need to look at is what is important to your business. So what I would encourage you to do is to pick 3 priorities. So when you're looking at attribution, what are the 3 most important things in what you want to build out? Now, I can guarantee that you will have some pretty difficult discussions. You're going to get everyone in a room and they're not all going to agree. And you will have some pretty unhappy stakeholders because everybody wants this idea of perfect, and everyone's idea of perfect is different. However, if one person says, okay, I want to just build out attribution for my paid media services, so just my channels, and another person says, well, actually, it's not going to work for me unless we have email and referral traffic in there. If you continue to keep that discussion live and don't move forward with anything, are you ever going to resolve it? Possibly not. So the easiest thing to do is to start out with 3 priorities, knowing that you might not make everybody happy. Start working on that, start phasing up a model, and then when you have that, and when you've achieved that, you can evolve it into something else. You know, attribution is this evolution. It's not something that we solve overnight in this box that we tick, and it's a project that's finished. It's an evolution, it's a way of working. The second, well, here people would often be tempted to talk about taking action. So on one of my earlier slides, we saw the words actionable insight, and you'll see that in any pitch or any blog post you go to about how to use data. It's everybody's favorite phrase. I would kind of disagree here and say, yes, taking action is important, but what's also important is knowing how to use what you've got. So it's very, very important to be using the actions you get, but actually, do people know how to take attribution models and use them in their day-to-day work? I would argue not. We're so focused on being at this end point of what we desperately want, and we don't understand how we're going to get there. So for instance, if you have an analytics team, or if you're going to be using attribution through your marketing team or through your advertising agency, do they understand once they have that data how to use it? Do they understand that attribution is not always about increasing or decreasing your budget, but ultimately you want to be looking at inter and intra-channel roles and redistribution? These are really important principles to start talking about, and when you're looking at a solution, to start thinking about, well, what data could my teams work with? What is going to work for me? Which brings me on to my third point around building into your one source of truth. This is something that one source of truth is definitely a phrase we talk about all the time, but if you build the most scientific attribution model on the planet, built by some amazing rocket scientists, but you don't necessarily know how to A, integrate that into your system, or B, how that maps to the rest of your data, then what are you going to be able to do with it? And I often like to think about this as, you spend ages researching what the perfect puppy is, and you buy the cutest puppy in the world, but you can't take it home with you because your husband or wife is allergic to puppies or allergic to dogs. So you've got this great option, but it just doesn't fit with how you're going to live your life, and it's just a world of pain. And so when we think about building into a one source of truth, you have to think about, what does my one source of truth say and how is this going to fit in? Otherwise, how are you going to educate your teams? How are you going to make this accessible? And how are you going to be able to tell the business how to use it in relation to all of the other data they see on a day-to-day basis? So yes, investing in the best thing for your business, but also making sure it fits with what you are trying to achieve and how you're using your data. And then fourthly, stop saying that it doesn't have to be perfect. The amount of presentations I've been to in my lifetime as an analyst where people talk about all the things that are wrong with attribution, but I've never heard a lot of people talk about what's right with it. Because actually, we are less wrong than we've ever been. We have more visibility than we've ever had over customer data. And we're actually able to start using this to make valuable optimizations in our business. So yes, be aware of the caveats, but don't necessarily let them limit you in terms of moving forward. So I leave it there, but I just wanted to say, wherever you are, whether you're in that perfectionism, procrastination, or paralysis, look at your priorities, learn how to use the data that you have, make sure it integrates with where you are, and then just start using it to get some value. Otherwise, we're all just going to stay in this perpetual state of uncertainty forever. Thank you.